The Commerce DevCast, Episode 2, Requirement-Driven Development and Vibe Coding. Hello everyone, welcome to the second episode of the Commerce DevCast, where we are going to talk about the requirement-driven development and vibe coding. Our host is Alexander Kravchuk, is a Magento Department Manager in WeConnect DK, Vitaly Boyko, the Senior Magento and Adobe Commerce Developer at the Carry Company.
My pleasure.
And me, Vladislav Podorozhny, software architect and partner in Runnersuit GmbH. And today we have a guest, Oleksii Lunkov, e-commerce consultant and great project manager. Oleksii, could you tell a couple words about yourself?
Sure. First of all, thank you for having me. Really great to be here. And my name is Alex for friends. So you can call me Alex. But I'm working as a commerce consultant and also as kind of a fractional e-commerce director, which means that I'm e-commerce director, but fractional means that I essentially work with a couple of brands at the same time. As Vladislav mentioned, I have some background in project management, so I tend to handle like operational stuff of e-commerce as well as business analysis and stuff like that. So really happy to be here today and discuss kind of AI, vibe coding, and that sort of stuff, because I hear that all the time. But you guys are gonna reality check what is really happening there, and it's going to be an exciting conversation.
Thank you for being here, and we are glad to have you. That's great. So those topics, actually, we have gathered together in our session meeting, the requirement-driven development, vibe coding, and one of the very interesting topics is about how the requirements are getting gathered and how are they getting implemented for the requirement-driven development. And would be great to hear from you, Oleksii.
Yeah, that's a really great question, because I think before we start discussing something, we need to properly define what we are discussing, and the definition will drive the discussion, right? So I think in the current reincarnation, requirement-driven development is essentially the idea that you don't need to be you shouldn't care as much about the technology that you're using as you should care about what exactly you're building. And that can be on different kind of sides of the extreme. So you can say, like, I don't need to be engineer or developer or even someone who knows how to use computers at all. I just open ChatGPT or Cursor or whatever AI tool is I have. I type the prompt, I get the code, and I kind of prompt my way through the kind of website and whatever technical experience I need to create that were before created by developers. On the other side of the extreme is still like requirement-driven development, but more like essentially like for engineer or developer who is working on the problem. It allows to step one step above kind of the current, like the traditional kind of setup of, hey, I need to know PHP, I need to know JavaScript, I need to have this EDE, which is focused on PHP. For example, I need to have specific plugins. So you kind of step up from the, I should understand the language, to I should understand the problem. I still am an engineer. I still am kind of very familiar with what I'm creating, but this concept of vibe coding allows me to essentially do stuff I wasn't able to do before because, for example, I didn't know JavaScript well enough, but now I can. So it's two ways of the extreme, but essentially the premise is, thanks to AI, I need to understand less engineering stuff and I need to understand more business side of things.
Okay. So before the AI era, it was UML diagrams where the architects were showing to the developers which data flows should lead to which business processes and so on, how it's going to be connected and what should be the end result. So input and output. And thanks to the AI that we have currently, we are lowering the bar for people that are not technical or not technical enough in this specific language or technology to do the requirement-driven development on the lower levels. Okay, I see.
On the higher levels, basically.
Yeah.
Well, it depended on like how do you define like
It
for
depends
me
from
like
which
low
point you're
level is
looking.
like memory management and resource management, and then obviously we have languages, and now it's like more conceptual. But actually like that's my perspective as someone who is non-technical. Obviously I'm working more on consultancy side of things. I'm kind of collecting requirements that you guys work off of after that, but I think the conversation is not about that. I think everybody who knows how to use ChatGPT or Google can quickly understand what vibe coding is. But what is valuable about this conversation that we're having today is actually your guys' perspective on the matter. Because I think that it's very easy to say like AI will replace us all in 5 years or in 1 year or tomorrow. But reality is slightly different sometimes. And
Slightly is too
too
small word for
generous
that,
with the
you know.
word, yeah. And exactly, like, and I think it's this podcast is very important for the engineers, for your peers, to understand what they are capable of doing in the domain of e-commerce using modern AI tools. But also, it is important for merchants to understand the reality, because it's very easy to listen to news and like read TechCrunch and listen to interview with Mark Zuckerberg and think, okay, my engineers have like 2 weeks to work for me, and after that I will replace all of them with AI. So yeah, I know that you've been playing around with those tools, with different kinds of tools. Um, last couple of weeks as we were preparing for this podcast and discussion. So maybe we start with you, Vitaly, then go to you, Alexander, and then to you, Vlad. What is your take on what currently, what are the available tools right now and what you can do with them?
Well, there are a lot of tools and there are a lot of options for doing something with them. But in the first place, I would like to question this concept of vibe coding and requirement-driven development, because, like, currently everyone is using AI tools to generate more code to develop new things. But the question is, why do we need to have a code in the first place? Because the code is an abstraction for humans. So we are generating code for humans to have an ability to read it and to adjust it. So which apparently means that a computer by themselves can do anything with that so far. Because if we can get rid of developer, we would rather generate some kind of machine instructions, or I don't know, some low level stuff, but very performant, because we don't need to be aware of it. Because AI can handle everything. We just ask, change this, and AI would generate something different, but in language that only computer understands. But now we are generating code which needed for people. Regarding tools, there are a lot of tools, uh, agentic IDs, agentic website, like cloud services. The biggest problem with that is, I believe, handling context, because the bigger context is, the less capable AI is, because it takes a lot of resources. From my understanding, what current AI is, what the language model is just a lot of if-elses that need to be like processed at some point of time in the scope of some task. So the bigger context you have geometrical progression of those if-elses. So so in order to use AI for really complex tasks, we need to have an ability to break those tasks into really tiny tasks. And it's kind of separate skill, but like so far it's really far away from just asking for, like, build me a website that's gonna sell, I don't know, for $1 million per month, some stuff. It's not going to work like
Optimize
this.
my website to make the
Yeah.
conversion better,
And
you
now
know.
we are talking just about generating new stuff, but the biggest task for us as developers is to maintain stuff, because the more advanced a company is, the bigger company is, it means that we have a lot of technical depth and a lot of legacy code. So, and we really need to have human reasoning to work with that. And for these purposes, AI is like, I don't know. So far, it's not perfect, for sure.
Yeah, again, the lack of the context, because it
Yeah.
has a very limited amount of context to be handled.
Yeah,
And
and
if you're gonna feed all the system to it, it's just gonna collapse.
I can imagine in future, we maybe could have some supercomputers that can handle huge context, but again, we have this glass ceiling.
Actually, Vitaly, that's really, really interesting take, which, to be honest, I never heard before, but that really does make sense, which is like, hey, why do we need code in the first place? Because code is the proxy between us as humans and computers, and developers are the ones basically who can speak this language, and they can help us as merchants or users or whatever communicate with computers basically, and they create software for us to be able to communicate with computers. But if we have a software that can directly instruct the computer what to do, why do we need code in the first place? And I think that's really interesting question, and I think that's dangerous, because essentially when you use AI in place of developer, you still have the code and you still are able to validate what you are instructing the machine to do. But if you have a machine instructing, essentially we're starting talking about new operational system, new OS, because like paradigm of current OSs is that, hey, we have like this kind of computing power, and we have software to communicate, to help users, me, communicate with the computing power, essentially. And then if we have software that is able to access this computing, essentially, like, I don't need software anymore. I can, as a user, I
You
can
don't need
communicate
this layer,
directly with
the
computing
interface
resource.
that's communicating between the machines, You're just directly gonna push the 0 1s to the memory and ask the machine to do the shit. Yeah, that could be the case. But the thing is, those languages, the programming languages, the operational systems, is actually the protocols, interfaces, and list of restrictions that guide your LLM how to work. So it's actually something that without it, I doubt that large language models would be able to handle things, because they are, first of all, they're language models. They're not the computer shit, models. They're about the language.
Yeah, but also, like, this is one kind of level of the problem, but another level is what Vitaly mentioned in the end of his kind of take, which is actually, if we as humans have direct access to computing power, right, and software as a limit no longer exists, then the next bottleneck is essentially the amount of energy which is available for that computing power. So bottleneck will still be there, but the nature of all bottlenecks is that as soon as you remove one, another appears. So that's kind of that's fine. But actually, very interesting, Natalia. You mentioned like the essentially technical debt, and then kind of managing it. To be honest, I feel like AI, quote unquote AI, will be much better in managing technical debt and essentially like scanning your code base, recommending things to improve, and have do the last step as it would be to write new software. So funny enough, I think AI might be really good at this. But yeah, I don't know. Alexander, what do you think?
Yeah, answering the last question, I think that it very depends how depths actually relevant to the business model itself. Because if code doesn't look like something that's earning money, then AI probably can misunderstand how it works and will give you some advices that doesn't actually solve the issue.
Yeah.
Rather introduce some, I don't know, new flow or something different, not the what business require. My starting point is actually the requirement. So what do we need to deliver the successful project? We need some technical expertise, which usually are in the not hands, but heads of developers or engineers. We need some business domain to understand what the business area is. We need to understand what the business model, how your client is earning money. And so you need also to have the proper schedule, of course, because if you need to do some huge project in 2 hours, it's probably something impossible. And you need to understand what need to be created. That's where we come. The essential part is to understand the requirements, how all these things can be combined into some new solution, new flow, money flow, cash flow. And talking about AI, general, the idea that this technical parts can be replaced. The another question like why we cannot replace more than just a technical part, more than just engineers with AI, which in fact we somehow can. But in this case, we are coming that there still need to be someone who can understand what AI is doing. And it's come with very interesting how we are moving through the history. Because if I think that's probably you remember, guys, it's many years ago that there was only very low level languages like assembler, then there was C and then C++, where you need to manage more things just in the terms of memory. Then the people, the humanity come with next advantage with higher level languages, and then they saw that okay, if it's a human readable language, then more people can understand it. Probably software engineers are not so important. But then again, that we had even more software engineers. Then we came with even more advanced automation, like we can have website builders, we can have content managers, and we can manage content without developers. And they saw like at that point, probably we don't need software engineers even more. But then we get even more software engineers. Then we get the first model of LLMs. Then we started to see that it's still not able to produce some production code, but it can help you. It can just simplify your tasks. It can reduce your time that you need to write your code. And then they started to think like probably we don't need software engineers, but still having to work, and we're still working with this. Nowadays, I was really surprised that in comparison with the last year, the LLMs did a really huge leap in how they are working with the code. And today's the reality that's the really a big chunk of the code is being written by LLMs. So more and more in more companies, the developers, they're ending up not just using LLMs to help them. They're actually only reviewing code or just adjusting it after the backbone code was created by LLMs. And it's also resulting in the market. And this time we're seeing that for software developers, causing issues to find a job. More and more companies talking about that some percentage of their code, of their stuff is being replaced by AI. We still don't know what will be consequences of this. Maybe it will end up that in a year we'll have a lot of security issues. These companies will have a lot of security issues. If, someone is lazy enough to review the code written by AI and they believe too much in the advanced technologies, but we'll see it soon. But reality is that they becoming very, very good. And why it was a surprise for me, because I don't know if you heard about the book of Daniel Kahneman. He wrote a book about thinking, the slow and fast thinking. Basically, probably someone who will listen us not know it, so I'll just briefly tell it. So he categorized that our brain can work in two modes, with fast thinking and slow thinking. Fast thinking, it's something that you can just rapidly grab from your memory, something that you don't need too much effort to think about, like multiplying simple numbers, like 8 multiplying 7. You don't need to think much to find that it's 56. For slow thinking, it's more something that you need to sit and probably spend some effort, your mental effort, to find out the result, like multiplying some bigger numbers, like 25 multiplying 35. So it's not something that you can just grab from your top of your memory. Well, if you are not a genius or tried to impress your parents a lot in childhood. Anyway, when the LLMs started in 2022, and I think until the 2023, 2024, last time when I checked them, I thought like, oh, that's exactly how they work. They're working with this kind of fast thinking. They are taking the first thing that come on their mind and they produce a new output. And the problem of the fast thinking that it's very biased and it's can have a lot of you can make a lot of errors just relying on your memory and what comes first in your mind. And then I thought like maybe that's actually the limitation where the LLM will stop, and that's where we'll have another AI winter that we already had plenty in the last half a century. But this time I discovered that there's a technique which is called chain of thoughts that is widely used nowadays. It's more an approach when you're asking AI to come to the task by setting step by step. It's not just give you an answer, but like telling you the plan and then following this plan to solve your problem. And at this time, it's really becoming much better results. So I'm thinking that we are having a really wonderful time I think this years when we can use AI to solve some kind of not just simple trivial tasks, but more kind of moderate things and even help you somehow to solve the challenging complex topics. But how it will develop will be we replaced with AI or it will end up with some limitation. I think we'll know soon.
Yeah, definitely.
What do you
About
think?
this chain of thought thing, so I wanted to add up. The chain of thought is actually, in my opinion, I'm not an LLM expert, but it looks like it's just you're doing fast thinking on a smaller tasks and rechecking the results and do it a couple times. But you're still doing the fast thinking, not the slow one, not the good one, but the fast thinking. Mentioned about the book, and so it's still a bit not so advanced as everyone wants it to be, but it's moving this direction definitely.
That's the big problem here, that we don't really know how our brain works, and
Yeah.
what we can judge is like how we are thinking about how we are thinking, and that's become the natural limitation. Yeah, we are trying to create something artificial. We're using something that we don't really know that's how it works. So yeah, you are right.
So that's the problem. But anyway, I want to talk about the concept of the requirement-driven development a bit. So going a bit back here, I think every developer, every engineer, the solution specialist, every person that needs to handle some task, they are following these requirement-driven development principles. It's, in general, you're trying to understand which result you want to get. You're trying to understand what do you have at the current state, right? And what you should do in order to reach out this outcome. Yep. And actually building up those small requirements, you're cutting off this big task on a small chunk of tasks and handling each of them. And yeah, that's something that everyone does. And with AI, it's possible right now to cut those tasks even on a smaller chunks and feed those small chunks to the AI. But that's very important thing right now. You need to understand what you should give on input and what you should get on output in order to connect this bigger picture. Because as Vitaly has mentioned, AI has issues with the context. There is a limited context to be handled by this. And as mentioned by you, Alexander, there is a fast thinking. It's making the errors, and it's better to recheck every small part of the results of your chunk of tasks. And that's why, if you're going to combine those things, that there should be a developer to split up the bigger task on the small chunks of tasks. There is a developer that need to define the inputs and outputs. There is a developer, or maybe another AI that will be developed by the developer to figure out are the results correct or not. Because of all of those tasks that still needs to be in place, the developers still are required to be in place. And it's actually proving your point, Alexander, that you mentioned that everyone were talking about the developers are not needed because we have developed, the great website builder, no-code website builder or something like that. Developers are not needed, and we're getting more and more developers. Because the more and more code are getting produced, the more and more legacy systems are getting produced that needs to be supported or replaced. And actually, that's something that will gonna give more and more job for the developers.
Yeah.
But developers will gonna start thinking about not the low level things, but the higher level abstractions.
Actually, that's I've been thinking about and listening to you guys, and obviously like developer is word that we all use, but I really like the word engineer, right? And if we think about engineers across history, not across like 10 years, but across the history, and not software engineers, like engineers in general, like as technology progresses, we have more and more and more exponentially more engineers involved in the economy. And here, like, again, if we think about a developer as someone who is writing the code in the specific way, working for like in traditional ways, like the traditional team with back end, front end, like tester, like PM, and this team is delivering traditional software. Yes, maybe the time will like again. I'm not sure that they will like be there will be no job for such teams. I think right now you can like I'm sure there are some people like supporting like some Ruby on Rails stuff or something like that. Like if you are Ruby on Rails developer right now and you're really good, you probably you have job. So but again, as times evolve, I think the concept of engineer will evolve as well. Like, and what they do will evolve from like building bridges to making like
Plan how to build a
websites
bridge.
to something else in the future. But I'm pretty much sure like engineers will be needed in the economy, like, and even more than today. So the concept of like we will not need developers is just not true, I think.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, and I want to add one thing. So what you're actually saying right now, that the development and the engineering in the IT is evolving, and that's totally true. For example, like 5 years ago, sometimes I need to call one of the front-end specialists to ask how to implement this or another feature. Right now, I have a pretty good AI assistant that could help me out to point me out in the right direction. Also, for example, currently I'm spending less time on building up the code. I'm thinking more on the architectural flows or inputs and outs of my solution, which is also positively affecting the result for the business, right? You're not focusing on defining the variable and thinking about the variable name. You're focusing on how the hell this order export will gonna happen and which potential issues we're gonna have. So I agree with you. It's evolving. It will be evolving in future, and I believe with AI that's actually possible to write almost no code but deliver the great results, especially in the nearest future, and especially if you're building something new. Because about the legacy code, we still have an issues here.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And again, I think like we're gonna have a lot of haters and people will say, hey, you are developers, you are biased, like we'll not need developers in 6 months. But
Me
I
too.
remember people saying like testers or QAs, right, gonna extinct.
Yeah.
And I'm working in IT for 10 years, and from the first day on my job, I hear this message for 10 years, and QAs are not going anywhere anytime soon. More than that, they are probably on the rise of their like need in the industry. But also, I think, anyways, Alexander.
Yeah, I'm just like it's indeed changing the job market in IT. Just a few cases I've checked the last few weeks, like open opportunities in Adobe, and found that if 1 year ago it was enough to just know the languages, to have experience working with some infrastructure, and then you can apply for a software engineer. Now it's required to have a strong like understanding and have a strong experience and background working with some AI and machine learning stuff, and also with large language model. And this is the big tech companies which are leading the industry. So we should expect that it's like a cascade will fall back to the other companies. So it's the right time to actually start studying how you can use AI, how it can improve your work. Spend some time to discover what's in the market, I don't know, what's the prices. Something is open source, something is you need to pay. But in the end, like in a few years, without this, you can end up in the situation. We know that the accountants, that's a very kind of old kind of job, and the people in the past used to write on the paper, and then we had a computer, and then the accountants started to work in Excel, and nowadays, if you are like not starting to get into AI things, you can end up that an accountant who can work only with a paper when everybody else is working in Excel, and this could be have a really bad
but actually that's a really interesting point, Alexander, because and this is what I wanted to say about Vlad comment as well, so I think that's relevant for both of you. We kind of underestimate the long tail of the industry and the amount of legacy software that is in the world and that needs support, and like we look at those big tech companies like Microsoft, Adobe, like Netflix. We think, they are leading, as you said, the industry, like they defining the job market. But today I was in a call with the client who was not familiar like how to launch Chrome on their MacBook.
Wow.
And that's in 2020. Like these client, this is my client, so they work in digital basically, and I think we underestimate the how long of a tail of the industry we have. So like if you want to be and if you need to be on the cutting edge of the industry, you absolutely need to, like, I would argue you absolutely need to get familiar with AI anyways, because it's very useful for you as a human. It will save you a lot of time. But still, I think if in 20 years you like serving like legacy clients, you will still have legacy clients to serve. This is what I'm saying. Like, it's fine, you will never work in Microsoft or Adobe, but you will have work.
I believe they have a lot of legacy code.
Yeah, it's my unpopular opinion. It may be wrong, but again, I know, like my father, for example, don't use computer in their work. So it's like, and he's fine. And I think it's,
I totally agree with you on this point. I have one word, COBOL. This is very old programming language that is still used, I don't know, in NASA or where. So in old systems that are super hard to maintain, but they require it to be there in place because they're controlling super important things. Yeah, I think you can teach AI to work with the COBOL, but if that's super important, do you really want some robot to decide will you gonna die today or not? No, I don't think so. So yeah, there still will be gonna work, but at the same time, we still need to be on the edge of the technologies to at least understand what can it provide, to understand what business value we could bring to the customer or to our business or to another business by using it. Otherwise, we're out of, out of our work, we're out of business, or we could have a lot of troubles with the getting and the new clients and helping out the current clients that we have.
I see two contradictions here. First of all, if AI technologies is something to have huge effort to learn and to embrace, which means like we still need engineers and no one gonna be replaced, and it's gonna end up not fulfilling the goal to simplify life, because you still need to put huge effort, so it doesn't make any sense. And another contradiction is like having layoff because of AI, which is kind of really doubtful for me, because why, if we have more power to develop new features, why not to use it and outperform our competitors? Like it also doesn't make
Yeah.
sense. I think it's an excuse. Just some companies might just doing bad, but instead of just admit it, they making these excuses because it's from the marketing standpoint, it would sound harsh, like we are just doing having bad economy. This is why we are laying off
Sometimes
people.
you just need to show
Yeah.
the good reports at the end of the quarter.
Yeah. So if AI is something to make life easier, it's gonna mean that to study it gonna take not much time, and it's not that necessary to jump into it and like learn everything right away. Because like again, it's tools that if we compare it with jump from low level languages or like assembler and PHP, it would take like I don't know how to express it. It would take definitely less time to learn PHP than assembler to build a website. But if for example, you need to dedicate equal time for PHP and to AI to produce the same result, it doesn't make any sense.
No, I think the promise of those like vibe coding tools like Cursor and like things of that nature is that you don't need to dedicate any time to learn the code. You can do it essentially like you already know how to speak, right? So just speak to the machine and it will write code for you.
I wish it would be so easy.
I will like speak to business owners because I oftentimes work with business owners on business side of things. As you can see, four of us who are in the industry for a long time we really know what we are talking about, especially those guys, not me. But it's a very difficult topic, as you can see. Like it's no simple solution. So if you think that because Microsoft has laid off like engineers, you'll be able to replace developers with AI in a couple of months, it's simply not true. Like the industry is changing, like, and I agree with Vitaly that again, we have buzzword. Before buzzword was COVID, then buzzword was war in Ukraine, then AI, and those buzzwords were just reason for companies to, as Vitaly mentioned, justify why their business model is not working. Because I say to my clients always, like, if you have a box and you know that you will put $1 in the box and you will take $2 from it, you will have you will put all the money that you have and even more to this box because you can take more money. So I agree with Vitaly. There is no reason to fire developers if they are, because of the tools, more effective and your business model is proven. Like, just produce more result, make more money. The reason why they are firing developers and not hiring developers is because their business model is not working. And that has nothing to do with AI. This has everything to do with business model not being effective. And actually, on a side note, we will not know the answer like soon, but I hope I will live to that day. So, for example, in I think like 20 years, I would like to see some researches being done of how many people became millionaires because of the AI. Nowadays, I see a lot of talk on Twitter and on threads about like, hey, I'm so effective because of AI. I'm doing like so many things because of AI. That's good. I believe you that you feel yourself effective, but I'm much more interested in like end result. And to be honest, I feel like the way how a lot of people are using AI is more another form of procrastination rather than effectiveness in their work. Like, they are not using AI to achieve what they have to achieve. They're using AI just for the sake of using AI.
I'll interrupt you. I want to say one thing. So I learned the MCP, Model Context Protocol thing that Anthropic with the cloud has created. And today I've just spent 2 hours to playing around with it. You know, just playing around with it without the need. It just showing me hello world thing, but I wanted the AI to do that for me. 2 hours procrastinating. So you totally true. Please go on.
No, and actually, like, this is the topic of procrastination and kind of effectiveness. Like, again, the self-reported effectiveness, right? That's an issue because self-reported, I can be super effective. I can say like, I'm using AI, it makes my life super effective. Like, okay, we'll not see the result tomorrow because no one is becoming millionaire in 1 year, or like very few people do. But I would like to watch the world evolving across like decades to understand like, is it really another tool, or is that like dramatically changing how we work? Because for me, I can say that with AI, I now do a lot of things that before would take me like 100 times, even 1,000 times more time. For example, I created some document in Ukrainian and I want to translate it to English, right? Previously, I would pay a professional translator. Now I can use ChatGPT. But again, this is not changing what I do. Like, it's not that before I wasn't writing ebooks and now I am writing ebooks because of AI. Yeah, it changes the way how effective I am in what I'm doing, but it is not changing my kind of perspective of what I'm doing. And I think that's very interesting conversation. And on the topic of procrastination, I actually recently talked to a friend of mine and we talked about like anxiety and procrastination. And I tell her that for me, like procrastination is just swiping between different social networks, for example, like Instagram, LinkedIn, Threads, and just checking updates constantly, and YouTube, for example. But for her, the procrastination was asking ChatGPT different questions. And she's
At
like,
least she's getting the new information, you know?
yeah, I said to her, like, I feel this is a little bit better. And she said, like, no, I hate myself. Like, this is procrastination. Like, I feel that I'm not doing anything, but I'm just asking these stupid thing questions. And that's a really interesting topic to watch for. Because again, with the internet, right? We have all the information on our fingertips. How many people you know who use internet to acquire new information versus people you know who use internet to do dumb shit?
Information.
Useful information.
Yeah, useful
That's
information. Yeah,
useful. Can we
and
count the new SDK learning is a useful information or figuring out the new requirements
yes,
of the
we can.
customer?
Yes.
Okay. So all of us, I think.
About forecasting things, I found recently a website that's called 1027, and there are some guys who are AI enthusiasts, and there was also some former OpenAI researchers. They are like trying to foresee what will happen in the future if AI will continue to develop with the same speed as they are doing it now. And I found it's like good science fiction, but in general, it's very interesting to read because I mean their forecasting is built based on some researches. They are not just imagining something that you can just write in the paper. They are referring to some researches like how it was in the past, how it happened this day, how it could change, and that's really interesting. Well, can spoil a bit that they tell that in the 10 years we will have a AI that's running everything around the world. But we'll see on these things.
Yeah,
I'm doubtful.
Yeah. And another thing, it's also important topic, that's how these things are impacting on their mental health. That's I read recently, that's Amazon, which heard I think many stories that's not probably the best in the work-life balance. They raising a bar of KPIs for their developers in this way, that trying to motivate them to use artificial intelligence and LLMs to speed up their work. So the business is just raising bar because they are believing in LLM more than they probably believe in their developers. And this raises another concern that these people are becoming in an even higher pressure. And I think that's the Amazon that's probably the example of the big company. And I think we'll definitely have much more smaller companies who are doing the same. And yeah,
Those are actually bad news. Give us some good news, mate.
That's not a bad news. That's just make worry a bit.
Yeah,
it's any kind of things should be still considered realistically. There should be some realistic expectations, like what it can do and what cannot.
Have you seen Jeff Bezos?
like,
how can he be realistic? He's jacked. Yeah, Alex, please.
This phrase, like, AI will essentially, how you said, AI will run everything in 10 years,
I will
right?
overrun everything in 10 years.
Overrun. Like this phrase, this statement, I have a lot of questions about it. So first of all, what is AI? Like, is it LLMs? Is it like something else? Is the like ML or like different like models?
Wait, let me ask ChatGPT.
Yeah, like ask it what is AI? Because I kind of that's one issue that they have because people say AI, but some of them they don't understand at all what they're talking about, and some of them do understand, but they're talking about different things. So for me, like, what is exactly the technology that we are talking about? And second is like, what does it mean run? Like,
Take over.
yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
in
like so. Yeah, and Alexander, maybe you have like it's not a question to you, but maybe you have a take on that. I kind of not that I'm skeptical, but again, those points are very good for news titles, but they are not very informative. So
But Alexander told us that they're using the normal statistic data, right?
yeah, but
So
again,
they
they
trust it.
yeah,
the
no, I trust them. I trust them, but I just don't know what they mean. Believe me, I fully understand that those are much smarter people than me, probably like
probably
a
all of us.
thousand times smarter. But I believe that they know a lot of the things that I don't know about, but I just want some explanations.
Yeah,
Alexander, we
that's
need explanations.
in general, their kind of work. It's not something that they tell it from the very beginning. Don't consider it that something that will 100% will materialize. It's rather like
Spoilers. Don't care
yeah,
about the
yeah.
research.
Yeah, it's more kind of they see like what we are seeing now and what we can imagine considering what we already know and in what directions it can move. So it's they referring to another work from the guy who wrote similar in 2021, and he forecasted things like a chain of thought. He forecasted that large language models will be kind of more introduced into the software development cycle. Also forecast some interesting things that's recently discovered in the codex when AI can just in a loop trigger itself until they make the task done. So that basically you can have even more than one agent. One is one agent is doing something, another one is checking the work, and then they can trigger each other. So
Well, I think all of those modern AI models like ChatGPT or Gemini, or they have many agents behind this text
indeed.
input. So you give the input and you think that's one model working on your input, but actually that's one model normalizing your input, one model like creating a prompt out of your input. So prompting is not relevant. It's important, but it's not as important as it was like in 2021, for example, or 2022.
Definitely. Alexander, please continue.
Indeed, and from their point of view, that's what we have right now, the LLMs, that they will produce new models that will be more developed, and these models will be used to develop even more advanced models, and that will continue until at some moment LLM will be able, let's call it LLM now, but we don't know the word how it will be called in the future. It will be able to produce. They also provide the definition. They will be able to produce tasks more efficiently than some people, than all humanity, than the most genius of genius that even lived in history. And they also define the different stages of development of the artificial intelligence. And they start in that the most likely, the first things that will be kind of then they will overrun people is something abstract like writing codes or considering some abstract things, not kind of robotechnic, not working on the buildings, building new buildings. It's more kind of the only advantage of humankind will be that their ability to work in the physical world, because from like forecast of these guys in 5 years will be very limited where we can still be better in the abstract world working with computer, abstract things, and the only our advantage will be to do some physical job.
Do you have any good news?
That's a dream, actually. I mean, no, I think that's I think that's a beautiful vision of the future, because I would love like the economy to change in that way that physical work is valued not more. I think we're still gonna need engineers to manage all of that technical stuff, but I think like equally, because I think right now physical work is very underrated because again, we kind of shifted from that physical world over centuries and millennia,
I would not
right?
agree with you. I think it depends on the kind of work. There is a lot of physical work that needs to be handled with many, many precise measurements and other things to be done. But you're talking about
I agree with you.
general,
Talking in
right?
Like, if we
general,
talk about
Okay.
like atomic engineers and stuff like that, like that's true. But in general, I feel like, for example, if you would talk maybe not right now, but let's say like 5 years ago, talk to students who are about to enter universities, what kind of work they want to study and want to do, I think all of them will answer like mental work, like intellectual work, not physical work.
lawyers, economy,
Well,
software.
yes.
Yeah.
And I think like really physical work is undervalued, but I think also humans are designed for physical work. Human body is at some point in history we started doing a lot of intellectual work, but that's actually disproportionate. The amount of intellectual work we do as human race is disproportional to the way how we are designed. We are not designed to sit like for 10 hours in a day. We designed much more towards physical stuff and physical world. And I think if technology will allow us to have the same kind of standard of living where like there is no crime, there is less like poverty, the economy is managed better and stuff like that, and we can do physical work. I can play tennis all day long, or like I think that's potentially a very optimistic like image of the future, I think.
If
I also
the
agree with
AI
you.
will gonna overrun it in a way, as Alex mentioned, that we can just do whatever we want, I would go hiking all the time, doing the boxing, sports, and spending time with my family. That would be fine. But I think you talking about a little bit more grim dark part of this story, right?
Thinking that's even in the way that if AI will do everything instead of you, it can be kind of depressive because
Yeah.
it's something natural for us to be busy with something. And I would just imagine that if you want to, write a poem and then, or like draw a picture and you find that AI can do it better than you, or I don't know, in some future when AI can, drive robots and do also physical job, and AI can do it more efficient than you, then you can find that, well, there's nothing left for you to be better than AI, than other people. Just you only need to sit and relax, but you're already tired to be relaxed. You want to be busy with something.
Yeah.
And yeah.
That's very deep philosophical discussion.
Yeah, we just move it far away to the
Very
philosophical
far
way.
I
away, guys.
remember like in Dune in the book,
Oh yeah,
right?
but
The
Larry and
robots,
Jihad, it
yeah,
was called.
robots are banned, right? So it's again, yeah, it's a very philosophical thinking. But I kind of want to wrap it up a little bit, or to bring it to where we
Back.
started, bring it back, right? And I actually have a question to all of you. And again, we can go probably another way around, starting from Vlad, then Alexander, then Vitaly. I think like my question is, what are first like 3 to 5 things every software engineer should first of all understand, but more importantly, like do right now to move towards being more competitive on the market? Second part of the question, what are 3 to 5 things every business owner hiring, or like char or whoever who is hiring developers, what they should understand about like the nature of relationships between AI and engineers? And I mean, we can start from who is ready. Maybe
Yeah,
you.
I'm ready. I
Okay,
have things
Vlad,
to tell
let's
you.
start with you.
So let's focus on the first part. What should the developer do to be competitive and do the best value? I will gonna start talking not only about the developers, but every digital specialist. So including you, including me, I don't know, marketing. So if we're talking about the AI, is to understand in general how the AI works and see the limits. As we already talked, it has a context issues. It's actually good in predicting next word, but not solving the mathematical tasks and so on and so on. You need to know and understand what AI can do in the current state and what it cannot do. Secondly, I think you need to explore the services that help you in your area. For example, for the developers, for engineers that are doing the code every day, this is the Windsolve. There are many other tools. That one super hyped tool, how it's called, Vitaly? Cursor, yeah. Never used it, but I saw many videos. GitHub Copilot, such things. I bet for the designers there are a lot of things, especially provided by the Adobe with the Photoshop AI things. And learn, use it, because they're specified for your specific small tasks, and they're doing much, much better job than the generic LLMs and generic AI. So do that. And the third thing, I would say, do not be overhyped about the AI. It's just a tool. It will gonna help you to develop your skills to deliver the better value for the business and for yourself, but it will not gonna help you to become the great specialist. As for me as a developer, I still need to understand how the code works. If I don't understand how the code works, there is no LLM that could help me to fix the bug or build the new functionality. You need to understand the very basics. LLM, AI could help you to speed up things. That's it. Yeah. And for the business owners, right? So if I handling the e-commerce shop, right? And I want to hire some specialists in-house to develop my Magento website, my Shopify platform, my shopware, I don't know, anything. I would focus on, first of all, still the generic skill sets and specification that this person must possess for this job. The same as it was 5 years ago before the AI. And only if I'll get 2 candidates with the same skill set, same certifications, they both nailed the interview, they're good. And the one has understanding how LLM works, how AI works, has some certifications, use it every time on a daily basis, I would hire him. But if this person knows AI but doesn't understand the basics of marketing, if you are hiring the marketing person or the development of the e-commerce consultant, if he doesn't understand those but knows the LLM, AI, how it works very good, it's no use of this person for now. Those are my advices.
Yeah, and yeah, I kind of agree with you very much. And you said very important thing, which is right now. And I think this is very, very important because as humans, we tend to live in the past or in the future, not in the current moment. But here it's less philosophical and more practical, meaning like it's not helpful for you as a specialist or for you as a business owner to think about, like, you can think about the future and you should think about the future, but you should base your current decisions based on the reality. And the
On the
reality
current
is
situation.
that unless a person is a good engineer, it doesn't matter if they know AI or doesn't. And chances are, if the person is good engineer, they already know AI. That's kind of, for example, I know that Vitaly is good engineer, right? And we talked on pre-show like a couple of weeks ago, and this same evening Vitaly was already like using some AI tool to build something. Like, because he's good engineer, like, but that's first thing. We are not yet there as anybody can use ChatGPT to say, hey, need this website, as you mentioned, to sell
Do it
something.
now.
Like,
Yeah.
no, that's maybe the future, maybe, but it's 100% not the reality. And you should base your decisions, you should ground your decisions in the reality.
Yeah. So the AI knowledge, how the LLM works and how you can use it in your work is a great benefit that will gonna speed you up. But that's not something that, should be the very first on the top of everything when you're thinking about hiring the person or thinking which skills you yourself as a specialist want to develop.
100%.
Basics are always basics.
100%. Alexander.
Yeah, Thinking that's the really way I found AI is very useful, and I could recommend it. It can speed up your learning and help a lot you to, let's say, to get know what you don't know. It's very good in categorizing things, and if you are just entering some new topic and you don't know where in what direction to move, what will be better, what will be worse, you can use AI and it will guide you. And it's also very good in explaining things, which is really sometimes nice if you can find, some narrow topic that's the only a few publications and you not really understanding it, you always can ask AI to explain it, like for a kid, which is very useful. Also, I would recommend familiarize yourself with what AI tools exists in your industry and what are suitable for your role. Because if you're a developer, that probably you're looking for some ADI or some things that are like be integrated into your ADI. Fortunately, this topic is so hyped, and most likely you will find something that's still more by a question of a price and what you are ready to pay it for this. And also, don't limit yourself. If you are familiar with ChatGPT, it could be not the best in your industry. Whatever these models are pretty similar, that something could be better for some specific tasks, and you can just play around, try to compare a few models, try to work with the same task and find what's best use for you. The next one that I would probably recommend, but it's kind of the optional things. It's just for those who are curious. It's really nice to know the history of AI, how these things were started, why there was issues, because this is not some kind of very new topic that appears in the 2020s. It's somewhere in the middle of the last century, and there were a few crises where it stopped and there was no movements at all, and everybody believed that the general idea of artificial intelligence is dead. So it's just for general understanding the topic, nice to know. For business owners and managers, I would recommend to consider that AI is not a silver bullet and not every task can be solved with AI, and moreover, like it's cannot be always used to speed up solving of some tasks. So if you are working with other people and these people are, not really efficiently using that how you think AI to solve an issue, maybe that's the limitation of today's AIs, not that people are lazy or doing something wrong. And the second one is to trust to your gut feeling, because AI is something that built from, let's say, everything from the general information, and they are very kind of the generic things. So they cannot know your business better than you know your business, and use it as an advisor, but you are still the only responsible for decisions. And if AI is wrong, if it's hallucinated, or just consider it you as just a regular common business, but you are kind of very special, if you have a very special business model, then the consequences still will be your responsibility, and trust to your gut feeling. That's what I want to say.
Yeah, great. And
Do you want to say
Vitaly?
something?
Yeah, in my opinion, long story short, the recipe for being competitive haven't been changed because of AI. It's still the same. You need to have evergreen skills such as great communication, active listening, ability to solve problems, and having good debugging skills.
And
So,
be a stress-proof.
come again?
Stress-proof. Be a
Yeah,
stress-proof person.
not taking everything too personally. So the recipe is the same. I don't think there is some huge amount of data to learn in terms of AI, unless you're not unless you don't want unless you want to I don't know, work in creation some AI tools, right? But for just regular software developer who just solving problem for a client, it's something that take, I don't know, day or two to be aware of. So I don't really think that it's so crucially important. But as I mentioned, evergreen skills should be top priority. If your English is not perfect, maybe it makes sense to improve it. Maybe if you not get along easy with people, with your team, maybe it makes sense to study communication and so on. So yeah, and also great thing to be more productive as developer and more competitive is to prioritize your health. For example, having a normal posture is helping a lot. Being able to type without looking at keyboard. I don't know the exact terms in English, but that really helps. And
You can do
if,
that? I'm
yeah,
always looking at the keyboard when I'm typing.
no,
How the
if you
hell? Are you a magician?
that's a separate skill, and there is a special application or website where you can learn it. So, and it helps to maintain normal posture. And when you have normal posture, you're not going to be as tired, so you can handle creating more code. And doesn't matter whether it's white coding or regular coding, but with normal posture, it's way easier. So I would like to prioritize those evergreen skills.
Yeah, that's actually good advice. And you haven't asked me, but I will still answer that question. I think I agree 100% with Vitaly about evergreen skills. And I think one of those evergreen skills is learning, like the ability to learn. And I think, in particular, in my non technical world, AI has changed learning specifically very much, because in learning we have these two approaches, kind of bottom up and top down. And AI didn't change much the bottom up approach, because like universities still exist. If you need to learn like quantum physics, you're still probably gonna start from the bottom up, right? But at the same time, top down approach, AI changed that dramatically, because I was recently doing some data analysis in Google Sheets, and I needed some very obscure formulas for data normalization and also like for everything. And I remember before I was doing similar task like maybe 4 years ago, and back then the loop between the question appears in my head. I started looking for the answer. I'm looking at forums, I'm reading stuff, I'm watching some YouTube videos where 2 minutes of the video and only 10 seconds in the middle of the information I need. The loop was 15, maybe 30 minutes even, between like question appears in my head and I find the answer. Now the loop is literally like 10 seconds. The question appears in my head, I ask that ChatGPT, I get the answer. Like, answers are mostly wrong, but it doesn't matter. I try them, they don't work. I say, hey, this answer is not correct because of that. I get the second answer. And this is the same as going through forums. The only difference is the time difference. This, I feel like in learning specifically, it was in more cases, it was appropriate to use bottom-up approach. For example, when learning some new languages, programming, or maybe learning like Final Cut to edit videos. Right now, the top-down approach is much more feasible. Like I can literally download the Final Cut, start using it, face some bottleneck, resolve it through ChatGPT, and move forward. I don't need to purchase course on Final Cut on Udemy or whatever. So I think like talking about evergreen skills that you need to maintain, I think AI is changing them as well. But yeah, that's very important.
It will gonna take much more time for AI to change these evergreen skills in our day-to-day work. And I'm totally agree with you about this loop. Time got decreased dramatically for developers as well. Because right now we are not researching the SDK or the documentation of the development. We are saying that we need this to the ChatGPT or to the AI, to the Anthropic, whatever. It builds out the code that doesn't work. We fix some things, or even ask the ChatGPT or Anthropic to fix it instead of us. We're trying, it works, great. It doesn't work, we are repeating. And the time we're spending is much, much less than we would have written everything from the start. So that's the new future, and that's something that saves us time for the development. And if we still have a time, I would like to talk about how time is getting saved for the e-commerce projects, for example, because all of us were working in e-commerce. And I believe that's actually important thing for the owners of the e-commerce stores and the merchants that are getting the services from us. to understand how the AI usage in a development and to building up the platforms affects their budget and timings. So based on my personal experience, that's not something where we gathered the statistical data, made the couple assertions and blah, blah, blah. That's something based on my feeling and time that I'm spending and tracking, for various things. And I see that around 30% of the time savings I'm having right now while using the AI for building up the solutions. Because I'm not thinking about, as I mentioned before, about the code, I'm thinking about inputs and outputs. I'm working in a fully requirement-driven development. So that's big benefit. Also, I see that I become more agile. Our company become more agile because we're using the AI everywhere where we can do that and where the law allows us to do that. And as mentioned before, again, front-end developer is not always needed. I can do things with some guidance from the AI, or me is not required to help the front-end developer on some back-end tasks. Or sometimes we don't need even the development at all. We just can figure out things with the AI and the customer how to do things together. And that's speeding up. That's the agility. But this is not the silver bullet. This is something that help you. This is the new tool that could help you, but you still need to know and learn how to use it and apply it properly. If you apply it like a dumb nut, you'll have a lot of problems. If you're going to push directly to the master branch and deliver everything to the production, what the AI has delivered, well, good luck, mate. So yeah, be wise, but be ready that you could save around 30% of the time for the building of something new and refactoring the solutions that are already in place and gain more agility. It's really interesting to get your opinion, guys, on that. So Vitaly, what do you think about this? Do you feel any difference in compared to your 5 years before this time, you without using the AI and developing the same solutions? Do you feel and see any difference?
Definitely see difference, especially when it goes about side project, because usually side projects have no such huge context, so it's easy to address issues there with AI. But when it goes about enterprise stuff, it's still easier because when you need to implement some certain functionality, you can explain it to language model and get some useful output, but it's still not the same as for side projects.
Yeah, totally agree with you. So it's easier, but if you have a lot of context that needs to be taken into account, it's not a silver bullet. Alexander, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I'm just recently played with things and found that it can be really useful if you can, for example, working with Magento, you can arrange the proper concept of modularity and define what you expect from your model to do and what data is required to be fed to produce the result. And based on this explanation, you can feed it to the LLM and ask you to produce some solution. I tried with some ED plugins for LLM, and that's not really speeded up things. I just found that's probably actually it's close to what you mentioned, but I'm thinking in my case it was around maybe 15-20% faster than LLM is doing the code. Of course, there will be some time to optimize it, to rewrite it according to the standards and etc. But you also can ask LLM to do it instead. But recently, and I haven't actually, unfortunately, checked it much to come to some conclusion, I found that's really, really useful things a Codex can do. Because in the contrast to the Codex, it's a recent development that OpenAI published. And it's in the contrast with just an EDA plugin, which has access to your code. Codex can have access to the whole environment. It can use your code to run its own environment, proceed with tests, find what is wrong, and fix it. And it was really fun when you can just write the task, then click run button and see that how it's in the loop, trying to figure out first creating the code, then trying to figure out why it doesn't work, then investigating what's the problem, writing some logs, checking logs by itself, and then fixing the problem. It's so kind of like a work of team lead, but the developer who is working is actually artificial intelligence instead of junior. It's still far away from to be perfect. It's still kind of a long way to to go until it can produce some really high quality code. But yeah, that's really awesome things happen these days.
Okay. So you also see 15-20% of the time saving that could be gained by using such tools while the development of the models, right?
I think with Codex it will be probably higher, but the big difference that you need to, most likely you would need to run your code in the isolation. Yeah, you need to run your model in the isolation or create your model in the isolation, and you need clearly define what you expect, what will be data fitted, and ask it to cover it with tests. And
So
with this,
actually, just need to learn how to work with this tool, and then you gain as much as possible. Yeah. So, okay.
And you also will be more responsible for higher level things, not to the code itself, but from the general, the architecture of your project, what its parts of consistent, etc.
Okay, interesting. Oleksii, what do you think about all of that? You as a person that are not touching code so often, you're thinking more or less on a e-commerce consultant point of view, higher level. What do you feel about that?
I feel like clients get probably twice as much value from my work as they did before, maybe even more, because essentially what's happening is that I'm spending 10 or 100% less time, 100 times less time on dumb stuff, like on translations, like proof. Man, we're talking about AI replacing humans. That's fine, but proofreading, it's fucking awesome. It's like I can write like with a lot of grammar mistakes, and I'm really terrible at writing like in Ukrainian, let alone in English. So but before I was writing something and then I would spend like 15, 20, 30 minutes like proofreading it. Now it's just I just say proofread it and paste my text and that's it. And yeah, it's awesome. And I can paste any text and say format it to Markdown, and I can use it in Notion. It's nicely formatted. I can say translate it. I can write statement in English and ask to translate it in Ukrainian or vice versa. I can like provide bullet points and write email. Like all of those things before, clients were paying for them, whether they like it or not, but they paid for my time, and my time was spent doing a lot of that. A lot of work which was not really effective. It was like proofreading, it was searching for formulas to do some data analysis. Now it's essentially like my personal productivity is much higher. And again, I'm not talking about AI replacing me, I'm just talking about simple stuff, like very basic, simple stuff. And I think if you as a professional are not using AI for those simple tasks, like as I described, you're really missing out, because what will happen is people like me will do more and more basic stuff with AI, and you will be doing stuff as you were doing that in 2020. And the gap between us gonna become larger and larger. And I think it's not about like AI taking over the world. It's about basic stuff, and we really underestimate how much time we spend on basic stuff and how much time can AI save.
I also see that the customers of ours, and I believe customers of yours as well, getting much more value from us when we're using the AI tools for simple things, or chaining down and cutting up the big task on a smaller, simple pass and doing things there. So it's even less about the time saving, it's more about getting much more value for the same time.
Man, I'm just thinking like it's crazy. I spent like 2022 and 2023 working with some stakeholders in digital transformation. And essentially what I did during like year and a half was listening to stakeholders and writing use cases and user stories. Just imagine if AI was at the level it is right now and AI assistant was with me on all of those calls. I would simply like take the transcript of those calls, paste it into ChatGPT and say like, hey, from what we discussed, create the use cases and user stories, and I would just proofread them. It's like 100% less, like 100 times less time. And my time was super expensive for the client. Like I was not working in the cheap agency. I was obviously not doing that for free. So the amount of like savings is tremendous.
I'm doing actually the same right now. We're using the transcripts and we're getting out the outcome of the meetings as a summary. We're using the AI and proofreading it afterwards. So that's actually saving a lot of time, especially when you have a tight deadline and tight schedules. So yeah, that's a killer feature. Today we have discussed the requirement-driven development and the vibe coding and how the AI changing our life, the development, the engineering, the consultancy, and everything around the IT and actually our world. We have, I think, nailed a couple of the points, especially at the point that AI is not a silver bullet, it's just a good tool to use to improve your skills and improve the value that you deliver to the customers or even to yourself. So choose wisely. Don't think that AI will gonna fix all the problems, and if it will, not now, but in a years from now. Thank you, guys.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank
Have a
you,
good-
Oleksii, for
have a great
coming,
one.
being our guest. This was really interesting and inspirational talks.